She mistook a millionaire CEO for the passenger in her seat. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The low hum of engines echoed through the crowded cabin of Flight 320 to San Francisco. Overhead lights glowed in a soft amber tone, reflecting off rows of silver seat buckles. Lena Brooks clutched her worn boarding pass and scanned the numbers above the seats. Her palms were damp. Her knees trembled. The air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air. Seat 12A, she whispered, reading the faded print again. She moved down the narrow aisle, her heart pounding faster with every step. A man in a dark navy suit was sitting by the window, typing on a laptop, his face calm, focused, and distant. She hesitated, double-checked the ticket, and smiled nervously. "Excuse me, I think this is my seat." The man looked up, his eyes deep and unreadable. For a moment he seemed ready to correct her, but something in her anxious smile made him pause. "Of course," he said quietly, closing his laptop. "Go ahead." Lena slid into the seat beside him, her tote bag brushing against his sleeve. Her breath caught. She could tell the suit he wore probably cost more than her entire monthly rent, yet his voice had been gentle, almost kind. "I am so sorry," she murmured. "Airports make me a mess. I always worry I am sitting in the wrong spot." He smiled slightly. "Maybe the right spot found you." "Oh," she laughed softly, embarrassed, and buckled her seatbelt. "You sound like someone who reads a lot of quotes." "Maybe," he said. "Do you travel often?" Lena shook her head. "First time on a plane. I am flying to San Francisco for an interview. If I get the job, I will finally be able to pay off my rent." She stopped, realizing she was oversharing, but he only nodded, listening. The flight attendants closed the overhead compartments. The captain's voice came through the speaker, calm and smooth, announcing a short delay due to weather over Nevada. Lena sighed and stared out the window. Raindrops streaked the glass like tiny comets. "I am Adrian," the man said, extending a hand. "Lena," she replied, shaking it lightly. "Nice to meet you." Her fingers brushed against his ringless hand. Warm, steady. Something about him felt strangely grounded, like he belonged to another world but chose to be here for a reason. As the plane began to taxi, Lena pulled out a small sketchbook from her bag. The cover was bent, the corners smudged with graphite. She started to draw the clouds outside. Adrian glanced at the sketch and smiled. "You are an artist?" "Trying to be," she said. "I work at a coffee shop now, but I save tips to buy art supplies. Someday I want to paint full-time." He nodded, watching her lines form tiny wings and open skies. "That is a good dream." She looked up, half teasing. "What about you? What do you do?" "I work in technology," he answered after a pause. "Mostly airplanes." "That sounds important," she said. "Like coding?" "Something like that," he replied with a faint smile. The cabin lights dimmed. Outside, thunder rolled across the distance. Lena leaned her head back and smiled to herself, unaware that the stranger beside her was not just another passenger, but the chief executive officer of the very airline carrying them through the storm. Some mistakes are blessings in disguise. And tonight, seat 12A would change everything for her. The plane touched down in San Francisco long after midnight. Lena stepped into the terminal with a strange feeling still clinging to her chest. The stranger from seat 12A had disappeared into the crowd before she could even say goodbye. Only the faint scent of his cologne and the memory of his quiet smile lingered in her mind. 2 days later, the morning fog rolled over the city. Lena hurried along a cracked sidewalk in her only pair of scuffed heels, clutching a thin folder that held her resume. The coffee shop she worked at in New York had closed last week, and she had spent nearly every dollar she had on that flight. Her rent was overdue, her phone bill unpaid, and her dream of becoming a flight attendant hung by a single thread: the interview she was heading to. The city felt too large, too bright, too indifferent. A bus rumbled past, splashing rainwater onto her skirt. She laughed it off, breath visible in the cool air. Just one good thing, she whispered to herself. I only need one good thing to happen today. Inside the towering glass building of Skylink Airlines, everything gleamed. Marble floors, polished counters, people in perfect suits and smiles that looked practiced. Lena took a deep breath and walked toward the receptionist. Hi, I am here for the trainee interview, she said softly. The woman behind the counter barely looked up. Take a seat, they will call you. Lena sat on the edge of a leather chair, clutching her folder. Around her, candidates scrolled on expensive phones or adjusted their designer coats. She tried to smooth her thrift store blouse, wishing the thread at her cuff would stop unraveling. When her name was called, she stood too fast, her knee bumping the coffee table, sending a ripple through the cups lined there. I am so sorry, she stammered, grabbing napkins to clean the spill. The woman interviewing her gave a faint smile. Relax, Miss Brooks. Accidents happen. The interview went better than she expected. They asked about her previous job, her motivation, her dreams. I like helping people feel calm, she said. I want passengers to feel safe up there, even when the world feels unstable. The panel nodded politely but gave nothing away. When she walked out, her heart was light yet uncertain. She had done her best. That would have to be enough. The next morning, she woke in her small rented room above a bakery. The air smelled like sugar and coffee, but her wallet held only a few crumpled bills. She opened her sketchbook, the one she had drawn on during the flight, and smiled faintly. Across the corner of the cloud drawing was his signature. Do not give up your dream. For a moment, she wondered what he was doing. Maybe he was just another traveler, a kind stranger she would never meet again. Still, something about his calm eyes and the way he listened kept returning to her whenever doubt crept in. That afternoon, she went job hunting, stopping at diners and bookstores, leaving her name wherever they would let her. No one was hiring. By sunset, her feet ached, and her throat burned from smiling too much. She ended up on a park bench overlooking the bay, sketchbook in her lap, shoes off to rest her blistered heels. Across the water, planes rose one after another into the orange sky. She watched them, imagining herself among the crew, serving coffee, smiling to passengers, whispering safety instructions with confidence instead of fear. A small tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. Get it together, Lena, she whispered. You made it this far. You are not giving up now. Oh. A gust of wind turned the page in her sketchbook to the drawing she had made on the plane, a window view of clouds with seat 12A written in the corner. She traced the number with her fingertip and smiled through the ache in her chest. She did not know that miles above the same city, Adrian Cross sat in his private jet, replaying the memory of a girl with second-hand shoes and a brave laugh. For the first time in years, the world outside his window felt real again. Down on the ground, Lena closed her sketchbook and stood, facing the skyline glowing gold in the fading light. Whatever happened next, she promised herself one thing: she would keep moving, keep trying, keep believing that kindness, somehow, would find its way back. Rain swept across San Francisco a week later, turning the sidewalks into silver mirrors. Lena hurried beneath her cheap umbrella. Clutching the envelope that had arrived that morning, Skylink Airlines had accepted her for the trainee program. Her hands trembled as she reread the letter. For once, something had gone right. That night, she sat by the window of her tiny room above the bakery, sketchbook open, a mug of instant cocoa beside her. On one page, she drew the airplane cabin from memory, the narrow aisle, the warm light, the stranger in seat 12A who had told her not to give up. She smiled faintly. That meeting had changed something inside her. The next morning, her first day of training began. The Skylink campus gleamed with chrome and glass, a sharp contrast to her small apartment. Rows of trainees filed into a bright classroom, their uniforms crisp and perfect. Lena's was slightly loose at the shoulders, but she stood tall. When the instructor asked each trainee to share why they wanted to join, some spoke of travel or ambition. Lena said quietly, "Because every passenger carries a story, and I want to be the person who helps them feel safe enough to tell it." A few smiled, others looked puzzled. But the instructor nodded. "That is a good answer." During lunch, she sat alone under the awning near the training hall, sketching clouds on a napkin. A gentle breeze flipped the page of her sketchbook, revealing the small signature she still carried. "Do not give up your dream." She traced it with her pen, wondering again about him. Later that afternoon, the trainees toured the main terminal for customer service observation. Lena followed the group, taking notes. As she turned a corner near the executive lounge, she heard a familiar voice, steady, deep, impossible to forget. She froze. A tall man in a tailored suit was speaking to two executives, gesturing toward a new Skylink logo display. Adrian Cross. Her breath caught in her throat. For a heartbeat, she thought she might be mistaken. But when he turned slightly, she saw the same calm eyes, the same quiet focus she remembered from the flight. Her chest tightened. Of all the places, of all the chances he worked here. One of the executives noticed her standing near the corner. "Miss, can I help you?" She blinked, stepping back. "Oh, I am with the trainee group." Adrian turned then. His eyes met hers. A flicker of surprise, recognition, then something softer. "Miss Brooks," he said evenly, though his voice carried a hint of warmth. "Welcome to Skylink." She nearly dropped her notebook. "You work here?" "I do," he said simply. "How has your first week been?" "Good," she managed to say, her pulse racing. "I did not know," he smiled slightly, "that we would meet again?" She nodded, speechless. The other executives excused themselves, leaving the two of them standing near the wide window that overlooked the runway. Rain streaked the glass, just as it had that night on the plane. "I kept the sketch you drew," Adrian said after a pause. "The one of the clouds." Her eyes widened. "You kept it?" He nodded. "It reminded me that dreams look different from above." She laughed nervously. "That sounds like something a poet would say." I am not a poet," he said quietly. "Just someone who believes you were meant to be on that flight." For a moment, neither spoke. The rumble of a departing plane filled the silence. Then a trainer's voice called her name from across the hall. She hesitated, then smiled politely. "I should go. Thank you for not correcting me that day." Adrian's eyes softened. "It was the best mistake I ever made." Her heart skipped. She turned quickly, walking back toward the group before her emotions betrayed her. As she rejoined the trainees, her instructor handed out small wing-shaped pins. "A reminder," he said, "that the sky rewards those who keep rising." That night, back in her apartment, Lena pinned the silver wings to the corner of her sketchbook beside the old signature. Two symbols now, one of kindness, one of hope. She looked out her window toward the glowing skyline and whispered, "Maybe fate really does have a flight plan." Across town, in his high-rise office, Adrian placed her original sketch on his desk beside his nameplate, smiling faintly. For the first time in years, the drawing meant more than any contract he had ever signed. He did not know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain: he would make sure this girl's dream never crashed to the ground. Days turned into weeks, and Lena found herself adjusting to the rhythm of Skylink. The early mornings, the safety drills, the endless rehearsals of smiling, even when exhausted, it all became part of her new life. Each evening, she would return to her small apartment, kick off her worn shoes, and study every manual until her eyelids grew heavy. Adrian Cross, meanwhile, seemed to appear and disappear like a ghost. Sometimes she would catch sight of him from afar during inspections or press events. He would nod politely, and she would smile back, pretending the flutter in her chest was nothing more than admiration for her company's founder. One afternoon, after a long training session, the trainees were invited to attend a company open house. The event took place in Skylink's hangar, transformed into a hall of silver light and soft music. Planes gleamed under spotlights, and tables were arranged with name tags and champagne glasses. Lena felt completely out of place in her simple navy blue dress. As she stood near a display, adjusting her badge, a familiar voice spoke from behind. "You look like you would rather be sketching than mingling." She turned, startled. "Mr. Cross." "Adrian," he corrected gently. "You are off duty. You can call me Adrian." Her pulse jumped. "I am not sure that is allowed." He smiled. "Then let us say it is an exception for tonight." They walked together along the exhibit of aircraft models, their reflections shifting across the polished wings. He asked about her training, and she told him about the endless emergency drills, about how she practiced safety announcements in the mirror, until her neighbors probably knew them by heart. "Do you ever rest?" he asked. She laughed softly. Not much. But that is fine. I like working hard for something that matters. Oh, oui. He looked at her for a long moment. That is a rare quality. A group of executives passed by, greeting him with formal smiles. When they were gone, she whispered, "They look at you like you are the sky itself." He chuckled. "And you look at the sky like it is still reachable." Before she could answer, music swelled from the speakers. The company choir began to sing, and the lights dimmed. Adrian leaned closer, his voice barely above the melody. "After this event, there is a training flight scheduled to Monterey Bay. I would like you to be on it." Her eyes widened. "Me? Why?" "I have seen how you handle people with patience, even when they are rude. That flight needs someone like you." She hesitated. "Are you sure I am ready?" "Sometimes readiness is not about skill," he said softly. "It is about heart." The words struck something deep within her. She nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, as she rode the train home, she replayed the conversation in her mind. She wondered if he treated all his employees this kindly, or if there was something different in the way he spoke to her. The city lights blurred past the window, and for the first time since leaving New York, she felt her life might actually be taking off. At the same moment, Adrian sat in his office high above the city, staring at the small sketch pinned to his wall. A line from her interview echoed in his mind. "Every passenger carries a story." He smiled faintly. Somehow, he had become part of hers. When the morning came, the sky over San Francisco was clear and bright. Lena arrived early for the training flight, uniform pressed, wings pinned neatly over her heart. As she stepped onto the tarmac, she whispered to herself, "You can do this." Oh. She did not yet know that this flight would become the turning point of everything, the moment where dreams, truth, and destiny would begin to collide high above the clouds. The next morning, the small Skylink training jet shimmered in the sunlight at Monterey Bay Airfield. The waves glistened beyond the runway, and gulls traced lazy circles in the sky. Lena stood near the boarding stairs, adjusting her cap, trying to steady her hands. It was her first official in-flight exercise, a simulated service for executives. She wanted everything to be perfect. Adrian arrived quietly, surrounded by a few managers, but his gaze found her almost immediately. "Good morning, Miss Brooks," he said with that calm, steady voice. "Good morning, sir," she answered, blushing slightly. "I mean Adrian." He smiled. "Ready to fly?" "I have been ready since the first day I saw the clouds up close," she said, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. Once aboard, the cabin filled with soft chatter as trainees served drinks and checked safety belts. Lena moved with practiced care, her every motion deliberate. Adrian watched from his seat, observing her calm professionalism. She helped an elderly guest adjust the overhead vent, shared a kind word with another who seemed nervous, and carried herself with quiet confidence. When turbulence rippled through the sky, a few passengers gasped. Lena reacted instantly, walking the aisle with a reassuring smile. "It is just a little air pocket," she said gently. "Everything is completely safe." Her tone was steady, her eyes warm. The tension melted away. Adrian leaned back, impressed. It was rare for him to see compassion displayed so naturally. To him, Skylink had always been about numbers, schedules, and safety protocols, but watching her reminded him that the true heart of flying was human kindness. When the plane leveled out, Lena returned to her jump seat near the galley. Adrian rose and approached quietly. "That was impressive," he said. "You calmed the entire cabin faster than the autopilot could." She laughed softly. "I just spoke to them the way I wish someone had spoken to me on my first flight." "Empathy," he said thoughtfully. "The rarest form of intelligence." Their eyes met for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. She looked away first, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you," she murmured. "I am just doing my job." "Sometimes," he said quietly, "doing your job well can change the way people see the world." For a few seconds, the steady hum of engines filled the silence between them. Then the instructor called over the speaker, announcing the end of the exercise. The passengers applauded. Lena smiled in disbelief, her heart racing. Back on the ground, Adrian waited near the terminal doors as the trainees disembarked. When she appeared, hair tousled by the wind, he handed her a small envelope. "A recommendation," he said. "You have earned it." She took it carefully. "Thank you, but I did not do anything extraordinary." "Yes, you did," he said, his tone firm but kind. "You reminded everyone why we built this company, to make people feel safe, not just to move them from one city to another." That night, Lena pinned the letter beside her sketchbook. She felt something she had not felt in years: belonging. Somewhere between the clouds and the kindness of one man, she was starting to believe that her life could be more than survival. And high above the sleeping city, Adrian stood at his office window, watching the reflection of aircraft lights drift across the glass. He could not explain it, but for the first time in a long while, he was looking forward to the next flight, for reasons that had nothing to do with business. 2 weeks later, the annual Skylink Charity Gala filled the Grand Meridian Hotel with light and music. Crystal chandeliers glittered above tables draped in white and gold. The event gathered executives, investors, and media, a celebration of the company's new scholarship fund for young aviation students. Lena had been invited as part of the trainee team helping with guest coordination. She spent the afternoon arranging name tags and flowers, unaware that her small acts of care were being quietly noticed. When she looked at herself in the mirror before the event began, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The uniform had been replaced by a soft silver dress loaned from the company wardrobe. Her hair was pinned neatly, her eyes bright with nervous excitement. The orchestra began to play as guests entered. Cameras flashed. Lena moved between tables, offering programs and greeting donors, with the same warm sincerity she showed to passengers. She did not even realize that Adrian had arrived until the room quieted at the sound of applause. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "please welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Adrian Cross, founder and chief executive officer of Skylink Airlines." Lena froze. The spotlight followed him as he stepped onto the stage in a black suit, confident and calm. The same man who had once let her sit in the wrong seat now stood beneath 1,000 glittering lights, the very picture of success. Her chest tightened. The room spun slightly. She whispered to herself, "He is the CEO?" Her hand trembled, the program slipping from her grasp. The realization hit like turbulence every moment, every kindness, every conversation replayed in her mind with new meaning. He had known who he was the whole time. She had been speaking to a man who could have bought everything she had ever dreamed of, yet he had said nothing. As Adrian spoke about compassion, opportunity, and the importance of believing in people, his gaze wandered briefly through the crowd. It landed on her, standing near the back of the ballroom, pale and still. For a fraction of a second, the mask of the composed executive faltered. He could see the hurt in her eyes, even from across the room. When the speech ended, the applause roared. But Lena could not bring herself to clap. She turned away and slipped through the side door into the quiet hallway. Her breath came uneven. Anger and disbelief churned together. He found her there moments later, his voice soft. "Lena, wait." She faced him, her voice shaking. "You knew. All this time you knew who you were. And you let me believe what? That you were just another passenger? I wanted you to see me without the title," he said gently. "To know me as a person, not as a name." "You lied," she said. "You could have told me the truth." "I never lied," he replied. "I just did not correct you." She let out a hollow laugh. "That is the same thing." Silence stretched between them, heavy with what could not be undone. Finally she said, "You have your world, Mr. Cross. I just do not belong in it." She walked away, the sound of her heels fading down the marble corridor. Adrian remained where he was, staring at the empty doorway. For the first time in years, he did not know what to say or how to fix what had just broken. That night, Lena sat by her window watching planes drift like slow-moving stars across the dark sky. The sketchbook lay open beside her, the signature now just ink on paper. For the first time, she did not reach for her pencil. The dream that once lifted her now felt impossibly far away. Rain returned to San Francisco the next evening, a steady rhythm against the city's glass towers. Lena walked alone through the nearly empty streets, her coat soaked through, her thoughts heavier than her steps. The gala had ended only 24 hours ago, but the memory of it clung to her like fog. She had seen his world bright, polished, unreachable, and realized how far she still was from it. At the trainee center the next morning, whispers traveled quickly. A few coworkers exchanged glances when she entered. On a television mounted near the lobby, A news anchor's voice carried over the chatter. Rumors spread last night from the Skylink charity gala, the anchor said. Sources claim the CEO may have a personal connection with a trainee. The company has not issued a statement. Lena froze. The screen showed a blurry photo of her standing near the back of the ballroom, the headline cruel in its speculation. Her stomach turned. The receptionist looked away, pretending not to notice. By noon, she was called to the manager's office. The conversation was polite but painful. "Until this clears up," the manager said carefully, "it might be best if you take some time off." She nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Of course." Outside, the rain hit harder. She walked without direction, ending up at a small cafe near the bay. The smell of coffee reminded her of her old job in New York, of a life that had felt simpler, even in its struggles. She sat at a corner table, tracing circles on the mug, wondering if kindness had been her mistake all along. Across town, Adrian stared at the same headline from his office. The photo of her face beneath the company logo made his chest tighten. He picked up the phone. "Find out who leaked that image," he told his assistant. "And make sure Miss Brooks is not harassed by the press." "Sir," the assistant said cautiously, "some board members are asking questions. They want to know if the story is true." Adrian closed his eyes for a moment. "The truth is that she does not deserve any of this." He hung up and stood at the window, rain streaking down the glass like the lines of a confession. For years, he had lived behind careful walls, titles, numbers, endless meetings, but one mistake, one act of silence, had torn those walls apart. That evening, he found himself outside the small bakery building, where she rented her room. Light glowed faintly through the second-floor window. He hesitated, umbrella trembling in his hand, then turned away. She had asked for distance, and he would honor it for now. Upstairs, Lena sat by her window, unaware of the man standing below in the rain. She opened her sketchbook for the first time in days. Her hand hovered above the blank page. Then slowly she began to draw not planes this time, but storm clouds parting over a thin line of sunlight. She whispered to herself, "Storms pass. They always do." Somewhere deep inside, the same quiet strength that had carried her across cities and heartbreak began to stir again. The pain was still there, but beneath it, something else was growing, a resolve she did not yet understand, but would soon need. And miles away, Adrian looked up once more at the light in her window before walking into the darkness, vowing that the next time she saw his face, he would have already made things right. A month passed before the city saw sunlight again. By then, the scandal had faded from headlines, replaced by newer stories that had nothing to do with her. Yet the damage had been done. Lena had lost her trainee position, and with it, the fragile confidence she had built. Still, every morning she woke early, opened her sketchbook, and drew. Clouds, wings, open skies, each page a promise that she would not give up. One morning, as she sat in the bakery below her apartment, a woman approached her table holding a cream-colored envelope. "Miss Brooks?" the woman asked. "This is for you. No sender listed." Lena frowned, accepted the envelope, and carefully tore it open. Inside was a single card printed with embossed silver letters. "Wings of Hope Foundation, Sky Gallery Grand Opening." At the bottom, handwritten in ink she instantly recognized, were the words, "Please come. There is something you need to see." Signed, simply Adrian. She hesitated for a long time, but curiosity eventually outweighed pride. That evening, she took the train across the city. The Sky Gallery was housed inside a renovated terminal hangar. As she stepped through the doors, soft music filled the air, and the scent of fresh paint mingled with the faint aroma of jet fuel from the nearby runway. The hall opened into a vast exhibition space, walls gleaming white beneath the lights. At first, she thought she was mistaken, but then she saw them her drawings. Every sketch she had ever made, from the first cloud doodle on a napkin to the page signed on that flight, had been enlarged and framed in delicate silver. Each was labeled "The Art of Lena Brooks." Tears blurred her vision. She turned slowly and found Adrian standing a few steps behind her, hands in his pockets, expression gentle but uncertain. "How did you—" she began, voice breaking. "I kept them," he said quietly. "You left your sketchbook at the training center the day they asked you to leave. I could not let it end that way." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "You should not have done this. People will talk again." "Let them," he replied. "This is not about reputation. It is about truth." He stepped closer, his voice steady. You reminded me what this company was supposed to stand for. Hope, courage, humanity. The Wings of Hope Foundation now funds training scholarships in your name. No one will ever lose a dream here again because of who they are. Lena stared at him, words caught in her throat. Why me? Because you believed in people when you had every reason not to, he said. And because I believed in you. Silence filled the gallery, soft as a heartbeat. Around them, her drawings seemed to shimmer with the light of something bigger than either of them. She finally whispered, I do not know what to say. Say you forgive me, he said, or at least that you will think about it. Her eyes glistened. Maybe I already have. A faint smile touched his lips. Then let us start again. No titles, no secrets. She nodded slowly. Just Lena and Adrian. He extended his hand, and she took it. For the first time in weeks, her heart felt light. Outside, planes roared into the night sky, carving trails of silver through the clouds. Inside, beneath the soft glow of her own art, Lena realized that sometimes the best way to rise again is to forgive and to fly forward. Spring came early that year, painting San Francisco in soft gold. The fog lifted more often, and the city seemed lighter, as if it too had forgiven the storm. A new chapter was beginning for Skylink Airlines and for Lena Brooks. The Wings of Hope Foundation had become a success, helping dozens of trainees from small towns chase their dreams. Lena now worked as a senior attendant and part-time art instructor for the foundation. Her days were filled with travel, laughter, and the hum of engines above the clouds. Adrian's presence was never far. He attended every scholarship ceremony, always standing quietly in the back, proud yet humble. But between meetings and flights, their connection deepened. The walls that once divided their worlds had fallen, replaced by respect and an unspoken affection that neither could hide for long. One late afternoon, the Sky Gallery reopened for its first anniversary. The event was smaller this time, no cameras, no reporters, just friends, colleagues, and scholarship recipients. Lena walked through the familiar hall where her drawings still hung. The final frame displayed her newest piece, painted from the cockpit view of a dawn flight. Its title read, Seat 12A. When she turned, Adrian was already there, holding something in his hand. It was the same Mont Blanc pen she had borrowed months ago, its silver clip shining softly under the lights. You kept this too? She asked with a smile. I had to, he said. It started everything. He took a breath, his expression sincere. Lena, I once built a company that connected cities. But you reminded me how to connect hearts. You turned a mistake into a miracle. So tonight, I want to ask you something. Her pulse quickened as he opened a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, carved with delicate wings, simple but radiant. He knelt slightly, voice steady. Will you marry me, Lena Brooks? Not because of fate, not because of forgiveness, but because I choose you every day, for the rest of my life. The room seemed to still. The sound of an airplane passed faintly overhead, like a heartbeat in the distance. Lena's eyes filled with tears. She nodded, unable to speak, and whispered, yes. Applause rippled through the small crowd, gentle and joyful. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger and drew her close. Later that night, they stood outside on the gallery balcony, watching a plane ascend into the twilight. Lena leaned against him, the wind brushing her hair. Do you ever think about that flight? She asked. Every day, he said. The wrong seat saved my life. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Maybe there are no wrong seats, just unexpected destinations. He laughed softly. Then this must be the best destination of all. Beneath the endless California sky, they stood together, no longer the poor waitress and the distant CEO, but two souls who had learned that love, like flight, is not about status or power, it is about trust, courage, and the choice to keep rising. And as another plane lifted into the clouds, its lights flickering like a promise, Lena whispered the words that had carried her all this way. Some mistakes, she said, smiling, are meant to happen.